to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and I feel like these episodes are now starting to just become the same old, where it's time and time again we continue to discuss another Union loss, another Union draw, and it's now been a long time since we've last seen a Philadelphia Union victory. And I gotta say, I mean, I ended last episode giving you guys props for continuing to listen to these episodes despite the Union losing, or you guys are checking out the goals breakdown videos, or you guys are reading the articles. I mean, seriously, hats off to you guys for continuing just to show your support despite the results on the field for the Union not being what anybody wants. And I don't have to remind you guys, but I'm going to anyway. It's now been 13 times this season with the Union have conceded multiple goals. And I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, man, it's just difficult. It's really, really difficult seeing one win in the Union's last 14 matches, winless now in the last 7. And, man, I don't have to remind you guys of any of the negative stats because you guys know them all. I mean, you guys hear all the stats on the broadcast. You guys read everybody that's covering this team. And again, I mean, hats off to you guys for supporting everybody that covers this team. And hats off to you guys for tuning in every week, watching games, whether it's home or away, because this is difficult moments. And I've said it multiple times, you know, this fan base the last couple of years has picked up so many new fans because all this team was doing was winning. And it would be a shocker anytime the Union would get a loss. And seeing the Union sit in 12th place now, 4-8-8 record, this is just uncharted territory for so many fans. This is uncharted territory for myself covering the team. And, you know, we're trying our best. And again, I appreciate you guys. And I'm sure the players and Jim appreciate your guys' support. And, it just sucks. It's a difficult stretch, but I really don't want to delay this anymore. I mean, we'll see how much that I'll talk about the CF Montréal versus Philadelphia Union game because there's not much to say. So we'll go into news. We'll go into the game, play a couple clips, and then we'll give blunder of the week, and that'll be the episode. So without further ado, let's get straight into the news. All right, so just three topics we want to talk about. 2 of them we'll talk about super quickly, and then the third one, maybe like 15 minutes or whatever we're spending talking about. But the first bit of news I want to talk about is St. Louis City has announced that they have fired head coach Bradley Carnell. Carnell was the first manager in St. Louis history. He joined the club last year in their inaugural season in MLS play. They were the 2023 Western Conference regular season champions. They won 17-12-3 in the regular season last year. This season, St. Louis City have a record of 3-7-10. They average 0.95 points per game. And I think once people saw the news of Carnell getting fired, I think, you know, that maybe brought some concern to Union fans. Like, wow, I mean, St. Louis is having a horrible season. And it's like, if they're going to fire their manager after a year and a half, then how's Jim Curtin's job safe? And, you know, we'll definitely get to that later on because Jim Curtin was asked about that after the game. But I think anybody can tell you that what St. Louis did last year, 1, is historic, but 2, it's pretty unheard of. I mean, they're the first ever expansion side to get 17 wins in their debut season. And I think if you like looking at data, you like looking at stats, yeah, a lot of the data would show you that St. Louis massively overperformed. And it's the same thing with the Union in 2022. I mean, they massively overperformed that season. Everybody hit their career year. Everybody hit their best level that they could ever go to. And everything just clicked on the Union that season. And that was the same thing that happened with St. Louis last year. Everything clicked for them. They won the Western Conference regular season. This season, not so great. And St. Louis decides to move on from Bradley Carnell, and we've seen 5 firings now in MLS. It's crazy. We're halfway through the season and 5 managers already fired. Remember last year we were seeing a lot of managers get fired after the season, and I don't think so much during the season. And we're already at 5 managers now, and we're only halfway through the MLS season. So I'm sure more and more managers will get fired at some point this season, and we'll see. We'll see. Some people, CBS, have been asking so many questions. Is Jim Curtin's seat getting hot? And we played that clip last week and discussed that, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. We played a clip discussing that, and we'll also play another clip. Like I said tonight, Jim Curtin was asked after the game, do you feel like your job's on the line? But the second point that we'll bring up is Thiago Almada has transferred from Atlanta United to Eagle Football Holdings in a deal that is 21 million plus $9 million in add-ons. And this is the third highest transfer fee that an MLS club has received. First one being Miguel Almiron with Atlanta United, then Alphonso Davies with Vancouver, and now once again another transfer for Atlanta United, this time Thiago Almada, and he's going to go to Botafogo first in Brazil, and then once January hits, then he's going to transfer to Lyon. This group, they also own Crystal Palace in the Premier League, and it's kind of weird, seeing him go to Brazil first, then he'll go to France, and then will he eventually make his way to Crystal Palace in the Premier League? And I don't want to spend too long talking about this, but I do think it's ridiculous that so many clubs are owned by the same people now in the world. And, you can really put the blame on Red Bulls for them owning Leipzig, for them owning Salzburg. And then they started buying up all these other clubs in other divisions and started putting Red Bulls in the name. And then we saw Manchester City do it. It feels like they have a team in every single country in the world. And yeah, this is just common now in the soccer world. You see an ownership group buy one massive club, and then they start going and buying little clubs. And I think eventually we're just going to see all clubs operate this way, which is so sad. And it's not how the game should be played, in my opinion. And I've said it a lot of times on this podcast, and I've said it privately to friends and whatnot. And it's, I respect Red Bulls, the system itself, because of how well of a job they do scouting. They have an excellent scouting department where they can go to these countries that are really untapped and really find a lot of really good players. Or, they can go to find players that maybe play in top divisions, and, they're not really getting looks with the first team. And then, Red Bulls usually send them to Salzburg, and they prove that they can play in Austria, and then they get sent out to Red Bull Leipzig and Bundesliga. And, every now and then Leipzig sells a player for a lot of money. And so I do respect how Red Bull scouts, but I don't respect how they just send players throughout the whole system. And like I said, it's becoming more and more common now that we're seeing this around the world. And yeah, eventually that's how I feel like all clubs are going to be ran, is just, you put a player in Brazil, you put a team in Argentina, then you move them to Ligue, you move them to the Bundesliga, and then you bring them to the top of the top in the Premier League. And yeah, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. That's how soccer's going now today. But hey, look, that's just the way that things are going. But the last bit of news, and I told you guys a couple episodes ago, once it becomes official, we'll spend a good amount of time talking about it. And that is the Philadelphia Union have officially announced the transfer of Julián Carranza to Feyenoord in the Eredivisie in the Netherlands. And I have a lot of mixed emotions for Julian moving on from the Union. I think I'll start off first with just saying I'll never forget last season in DC United at Aldi Stadium, where afterwards it was Jim Curtin talking, and then it was Julian Carranza. And so after we asked Julian questions, or maybe it was 2 years ago, I can't remember, but I know it was definitely down at Aldi Field. And after Carranza got done speaking to us, he came up to me, patted me on the back, and said, "Hey, thanks for coming." And he didn't have to do that, and said, "Yeah, I'll see you around." And it was something really, really simple, but it meant a lot that hey, you got acknowledged. And Jim Curtin's really good about doing that too. Every time that you travel to away games, but yeah, I mean, just such a small gesture from Julian meant a lot to me in that moment. And anytime that I've talked to him in the locker room, and especially, when I'm not one of the people that usually gets to ask the players questions first, or, I could jump in there if I wanted to, but I know my place. And so I let other people go first. And then it's like, I'll jump in then. But Julian's always like, notice that I feel like making sure everybody gets their questions in. And so after, the main guys get their questions in, then Julian will stick around, making sure everybody else can get questions that haven't been asked or asked a different way. And yeah, he's been really respectful in that situation. And I have a lot of respect for him too, because he's been on record saying this, that when he was in Miami, his English wasn't great. He comes to Philadelphia in 2.5 seasons, and his English is really, really good. He can understand it. He can speak it so well. And I have so much respect for just any players that know how to speak multiple languages, and especially a language that isn't your native tongue. I mean, Julian had no reason to know English in Argentina, and really didn't have to learn English in Inter Miami either. And comes to Philadelphia in 2.5 seasons. I mean, his English was really, really good. And so, yeah, I mean, I have so much respect for Julian just because of how respectful he's always been to me in the locker room. And again, it's just that small gesture of patting me on the back and saying, "Hey, thanks for coming, and I'll see you around." I mean, it's something so small, but I think that just speaks of the character of who Julian Carranza is. And so Ernst Tanner came out in a statement that the union released and said, Julian has accomplished a great amount in his time with the union. We initially brought him in after seeing his potential to fit our aggressive style of play, and were pleased at how quickly he developed and adapted. He has been an integral part of our success, and we're grateful for all he has contributed both on and off the field. But this is the right move for the player as he continues his development, and the best move for the club as we look to make adjustments heading towards the summer transfer window. And so that last part, as we look to make adjustments heading towards the summer transfer window. We've heard Jim Curtin mention multiple times that, yeah, involvement, investment isn't going to come in the summer. It's going to be too late. The players that we have here are going to be the only players that get us through the season. And so Ernst Tanner is saying, we're looking to make adjustments heading towards the summer transfer window. And I'm not going to try to confuse you guys with all the MLS rules and, trying to understand how the union are compliant, how the union aren't compliant with the roster rules. But we do know with the transfer of Julian Carranza that opens up a DP spot now. The union free up $1 million that they had tied in salary. And so they can allocate that money elsewhere, whether that be bringing in players, whether that be giving more players pay bumps. The union have $1 million to play with that they didn't have before. And I know the first thought everybody's going to have is invest the money then. Invest the money. And I'm with you 100%. You lose a key player like Julian Carranza, you want to see that money reinvested. But there's rumors out there. Tom Bergen, I know, has reported this. Jose Nunez has also spoken about this, that MLS right now, they have one buyout per club, but halfway through the season, MLS decided they're going to change some rules up and give teams 2 buyouts. And so I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, if we see the union use buyouts on some players to free up roster spots so they can bring in new players if they really do intend on investing this summer. I'm not sure if we'll see the investment that fans are hoping for. I'm not sure if we'll see investment at all. I mean, it's July 1st and the transfer window in MLS opens in a couple of days. I'll go ahead and look this up. I'm trying to find it. Putting myself on the spot. The secondary transfer window opens up on Thursday, July 18th to Wednesday, August 14th. So we still have 16, 17 days, depending on when you guys are listening to this podcast. We're recording it Monday night. So I'm sure most of you guys are listening to it on a Tuesday morning. I almost said Friday. Yeah, maybe some of you guys are listening to the podcast on Friday, but I think majority of you guys, as soon as the podcast gets released, you guys are listening to it. But yeah, so the union are freeing up some money, and Ernst Henner said, yeah, this is the right move for the player. This is the right move for the club. And I'm shocked that the union got anything for Julian Carranza. His contract was expiring at the end of the season. Julian Carranza was not going to sign a new contract with the union. And so teams could have had Julian for free in the wintertime. But instead, Feyenoord decided to pay a little bit of a transfer fee to the union. I'd be shocked if it's over $1 million. No number's been reported by anybody. If we get that number, then I'll slip it in to a podcast at some point. But as things stand, we don't know what that number is. We do know that the union got a sell-on clause included in the deal with Feyenoord. But speaking of sell-on clauses, when the union brought Julian in from Inter Miami, the union paid $500,000 in game plus a sell-on clause. But the union actually agreed to take on the sell-on clause that Inter Miami agreed with Banfield, the club that Inter Miami brought Julian Carranza from in Argentina. And at the time, Inter Miami paid $5.8 million to Banfield for Carranza. And things just didn't work out for Julian in Miami. And Julian was asked about the move from Argentina to Miami to Philadelphia in his debut interview with Feyenoord. And this is what Julian had to say.
Yeah, I mean, Miami was a tough team for me. I couldn't play much. I couldn't show a lot, especially when Gonzalo Higuain came. It was difficult for me to play minutes, so that's why I went to Philly on a loan, and then I found my place. Honestly, it was 2.5 years with Philadelphia where it was myself. I was able to be comfortable outside of the pitch, be comfortable on the pitch. So I was really myself, and then I got to my best level there.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right that moving to Philadelphia was the best decision for Julian's career, and he got to his best level on the field, off the field. He was happy, and I think we could see that. And you guys saw in all the videos that the union would create for social media that Julian really enjoyed doing those videos, and he gave everything for the badge. Literally gave everything for the badge, even when his future just seemed uncertain at many moments with all these rumors swirling around that, will Julian leave during the summertime? Will he leave in the wintertime? And, he stayed a true professional. He's never said a bad word about the club. And I have so much respect for a player that isn't bashing his current club and just focusing on, the now, not focusing on the future. Because you can never tell what's going to happen in the future. All you can tell is, what's happening right there in the very moment. And that's how Julian Carranza has always approached things. And just when I think of Julian Carranza, if you ask me to describe him in one word, it's respectful. I think a lot of you guys would agree with that as well. And in that interview too, I can leave the link if you guys want to listen in the show description. It was about a 6-minute interview that Julian gave with the club. And, his message was he's going to give everything for the badge. And you saw that with Philadelphia. He did exactly that. And what a great move the union did with Inter Miami to bring Julian Carranza here for $500,000 in GAM. And I've said this before in a podcast where I think Julian's a good player, but I do believe that there are other Julian Carranzas out there. So as much as it hurts that the union are losing Julian Carranza, I feel like they could find another one. But here's the thing. The union won't pay what it takes to bring another Julian Carranza into the club. The union would never pay $5.8 million to bring a player into the club. And you hear Jim Curtin say, you hear Ernst Tanner saying it, we're a cohesive group where one individual isn't going to win us a game. We're an organization that believes that one whole group can beat individual play. And so the Union are never going to spend that kind of money to bring a star player, a potential future star player that has a high price tag tagged to their name. They're never going to do that. And so that's why I think there will never be another player like Julian Carranza in Philadelphia, because they won't pay to get a player like that. And yes, when you look at Julian in 95 total appearances, 43 goals, 20 assists, he averaged 38% of his shots on target. Mikal Ua, for those curious, 52% of his shots are on target. And then Daniel Gazdag out of the front three, 54.8% of his shots are on target. And so Julian Carranza, the lowest out of all them, but Julian for sure takes the most shots out of all those players. And Julian's always getting himself in good positions. 10 game-winning goals in his time in Philadelphia, 22-4-5 record for the Union when he scores in a game. This guy has done so much. Back-to-back seasons where he scored 14 goals in MLS play in 2022, 2023. And he's only the second player in club history to have back-to-back double-digit goal seasons. And, people discuss what are some moments that stick out. And a lot of people are going to say that equalizing goal that he scored against New York City in the playoffs that eventually led to the Union going to MLS Cup in 2022. He also had an assist in that game too, I believe it was. Julian Carranza's had so many fantastic moments. Kyle and Jillian Almany of the One Team We Agree on a few weeks ago asked on Twitter, what are people's favorite goal from Julian Carranza? And again, so many people said that goal against New York City in the Eastern Conference Final. But for me, I think it's the goal against Montreal last season, I believe it was, where Matt Real's on the left-hand side, keeps the ball in play for the Union, passes it to Julian Carranza, and Julian Carranza, outside of the box, curls it past the goalkeeper's left. And Julian had such a tough angle to place this ball, didn't have much room, and he had to make this perfect, and it was the perfect shot. A lot of people say that set piece that he scored this season where Jack McGlynn rolled the ball to him and he put the ball in the back of the net, I believe that was against New York City this season. They tried to play similar down in DC earlier this year. It didn't come off. I believe Carranza hit the post. His goal that he scored against Colorado Rapids last season sticks out to me. That gave the Union the lead, I believe, at 2-1. And I mean, there's been so many goals. I mean, the hat trick this season against Saprissa, and I was like, the very first game, like literally the very first game for the Union this year. And I think if you would have told us after watching that game that the Union were going to have the season that they're having, I don't think any of us would have believed you after seeing Julian Carranza score a hat trick in CONCACAF Champions Cup against Saprissa, down in Saprissa. It's unbelievable. This guy could literally win you a game on his own. He's that dynamic. He's that good. And he was always advertised for us. Yeah, he's a player that is going to work his tail off defensively. He's going to press. The goals really aren't there. And so Union fans, media members, we had the expectations that, okay, well, if he scores his goals, then so be it. And I can remember people being upset like, oh, this is a horrible deal. Why are the Union bringing this guy in? A guy who only scored 3 goals, I believe, down in Miami. And, I was one of those people too. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what are we doing? What do we see in this guy? And little did any of us know that Julian Carranza was legit the real deal. And you heard him. It was tough in Miami, and especially when they bring in Higuain, things didn't go as planned for Julian into Miami, and so he gets loaned to the Union, and then the Union make the deal permanent in 2022. And just what a player in his 2.5 seasons, and to see that this guy meant so much to the fans, took time out to take pictures, to sign autographs, just chat with fans. He didn't let any of this success go to his head. It was always about the fans, always about giving back, always about being respectful. And so that's how I'm always going to remember Julian Carranza with the Union. And I think all of you guys too are going to have fond memories of him. And The only thing that I'll say negative is, I kind of wish that the club would have given the fans the send off that they deserved, the send off that Julian deserved, because we all saw the writing on the wall. Everybody knew Julian was leaving. And, the last goal that we'll see that he scored was, against New York City at home. And, um, yeah, it's just sad that he never got the proper send off. And especially, too, like, he didn't get that proper of a goodbye on social media either. And so that's the only negative I have, that I wish the club would have done more for him. But yeah, what a player that Julian was, and we won't ever see another player like him, because I'm not convinced that the Union will pay to bring in another Julian Carranza. Yes, there are more Julian Carranzas out there, but the Union won't pay to get those type of players. But that's all the points that I have, and I told you guys it's going to be a while that we talk for Julian Carranza, but for a player that's meant so much for this club and so successful in his time in Philadelphia, he deserves that long segment. But let's go ahead and talk about the CF Montreal versus Philadelphia Union game. As we all know, the Union lose that game 4-2. And the Union were actually leading this game at halftime. And there was a stat on TV that said when the Union lead at half, the 3-1-1, which is crazy when you think about how little the Union had led at halftime this season. Now we know that stat's 3-2-1, since they blew not one, but two leads in this game. They scored the opening goal in this game with Quinn Sullivan after a rocket of a pass by Nate Harry on the right-hand side. It's a great first touch by Quinn Sullivan with his left, and then the ball is behind him, and he backs up, and then it puts the ball on the ground, and it beats the goalkeeper, hits off the right post, and bounces into the back of the net. Union give up a set piece to Joseph Martinez. Leon Flock loses Martinez, and the Union, and so many teams do this, you're playing a hybrid of zonal and man marking. If you guys haven't checked out the goals breakdown video, youtube.com/freekickpod to see exactly what I'm talking about. Leon Flock loses his guy, and so Nate Harriel's the closest to the zone where Joseph Martinez is now in. Joseph Martinez beats Nate Harriel to the ball, really gets up there, and it's a powerful header. 1-1, 5 minutes later, Union score off of a set piece with Jesus Bueno. It's now 12 set piece goals now for the Union in MLS, and I believe that's still the most in MLS play this season. I mean, it was a fantastic set piece goal by the Union, and so you go into the half winning 2-1, and yeah, you feel a little bit confident that the Union were the better team, I'd say, in the first half, and the scoreline definitely proves it. Unfortunate that you give up a goal off of a set piece. Andrew Rick does make his second consecutive start. And then, for as good as the first half was, everything comes tumbling down in the second. The first chance in the second half came in the 56th minute, which was the goal. You have Kai Wagner before the free kick by Bryce Duke that wound up in the back of the net. Montreal has a corner kick, and Kai Wagner goes to the ground easily. Does he get hit in the head? Does he not? Referee says no, get up. So he allows Montreal to continue to play on. And so Montreal resets with the goalkeeper, take it all the way back to the goalie. And then they just come again, build up again against the Union. You have Jack Elliott fouling on the play in a spot where he doesn't really need to be fouling, but unless he gives away the free kick. And then you have Joseph Martinez making a run across the 18-yard box as soon as Bryce Duke kicks this ball. And you have Andrew Rick get thrown off by the run by Joseph Martinez. And so he jumps expecting a header, and he winds up getting nutmegged by this ball because he jumps up so high, the ball bounces between Andrew Rick's legs and winds up in the back of the net, 2-2. And that's now 5 set-piece goals that the Union have conceded on the season. Who Scored says 5, but I really think it's 6. And I kept refreshing the site because before this game, it said that they had conceded 4. And so in this game, they definitely conceded 2 games. But I don't know, maybe they're not counting the Bryce Duke free kick as a set piece. I'm not quite sure, but it's definitely a free kick spot. It's definitely a set piece goal that Montreal scored there. And so it's 2-2. And then you switch to a 5 in the back and you can see 2 more goals. And Jim said after the game, the whole reason they went to 5 in the back, they switched from 4 to 5, is because he wanted to stop the bleeding. That's why they switched. And so I looked up the stats, and I wholeheartedly disagree with Jim Curtin there. Montreal, they had 71.7% possession from when the Union switched from Olivier Bizot to when they scored the goal with Yankov in the 89th minute. They had 71.7% possession of the ball. They outshot the Union 4-1 from the moment that the Union switched from the 4 to 5 to when Montreal scores to make it 3-2. Because Jim said, I wanted to stop the bleeding after the Bryce Duke goal that made it 2-2. Because from that moment, Montreal controlled 69.5% possession of the ball before the Olivier Bizot substitution in the 76th minute. And yes, Montreal was seeing a lot of the ball, but they only had 2 shots, and neither one of those were on target. And so I'm not sure what Jim meant by stopping the bleeding when, yes, Montreal's controlling the ball, but they're not doing anything with it. And Jim Curtin said time and time again, we all know this, that possession with the ball is meaningless if you do nothing with it. And you only saw 2 shots, only 2 shots by Montreal, and neither one of them were on target. And so I don't know how Jim felt like the team was bleeding. I thought that they had a control on things defensively. You're playing guys in their right positions. You're playing a flat 4-4-2. And so that means you have 4 midfielders and 4 defenders. And you switch to the back 5, and now you're having 1 less midfielder, and you're going with 5 in the back, and you're doing that to bunker down. I get it. But leaving yourself exposed to only 3 in the midfield compared to the 4 that Montreal has. And then, they put their wingbacks up there where it really makes it interesting. At times it's 6 midfielders. Sometimes it's 5 midfielders. And they make it very, very difficult with those wingbacks. And so you're looking at a midfield before you make the switch of 4-on-4, sometimes 5v4, 6v4. You switch to a back 5. You put Nate Herriot as a center back with Glesnes and Jack Elliott, and you put Olivier Bizot as the right wing back, and it doesn't work out. Players look confused. Players didn't seem to know who to follow when Montreal's sending bodies forward. And you saw it on the first goal where Yankov has loads of space, and so it's Jacob Glesnes who steps to him. And Jacob Glesnes gets beat way too easily. Nate Herriot gets turned way too easily. And, that's harsh to blame Nate because he's playing in a position where it's not his natural position. And so I don't agree with Jim Curtin at all that, the team was bleeding at 2-2. They were bleeding once you switch to a back 5. Olivier Bizot, not great, was not giving you anything defensively. When you switch to a back 5, now you make it very difficult to play out of the back. You don't have an outlet pass. You have 1 less option as an outlet pass. And so Montreal's keeping you pinned down in your own half. And you're suffocating. And I didn't feel that way when it was a back 4. But certainly when you switch to a back 5. And what's it going to take for the Union, for Jim Curtin to realize that this team cannot play with 5 in the back? It never ends good for them. And it didn't. You give up 2 goals. Not good enough. And so Jim Curtin was asked after the game, the bench guys, they're not getting it done. How frustrating is that? And he was asked this question twice, but differently. And so this is the first one from Joe Tanzi asking, how frustrating is it that the bench guys, in games like this specifically where you need to close out games and they're not there to help you out? How frustrating is that? This is what Jim Curtin had to say.
I think there's no question that we're a little bit thin right now. A couple injuries have hurt us. The call-ups we already, we knew about that those would happen. Again, Ty took an injury in in the warm-ups, and we didn't think we'd have him. So we were adapting and adjusting again. Luckily, he was able to go, and the back loosened up a little bit for him. So give him credit. But it's a challenge right now for us to, finish a game off, to close a game off, and maybe take it from a tie to a win. And again, we talked about all week, we're best when we're proactive and not reactive. And right now, I would say as a whole on the field, myself, we're reacting rather than being proactive, and we're paying for it. So we have to find a way to change that. It hurts again. Nobody's happy. The guys are close to breaking out of it. And every time I think that we're going to get a bounce or a break to at least, take a point, which we should have tonight, we let ourselves down.
And you hear Jim mention that Todd picks up a back injury, and warm-ups weren't sure if he was going to go or not. And he winds up pushing through, playing 76 minutes. So credit to you, Todd for being an option, because Mikel Ua, we found out on Friday, he's out 2 to 3 weeks with a adductor strain. And you lose Julián Carranza, and now you lose Mikel Ua for 2 to 3 weeks. Ty Baribo, back injury, and so we'll find out on Tuesday, how his back's doing. Is he going to be good to go against Chicago? We'll find out all those answers. But yeah, that would have been devastating if Ty Baribo cannot go against Montreal. He does, and played well, did his job, and wasn't given a ton of chances in this game. But, he did the best that he could with what he was given, which wasn't much, especially when you're not playing with a 10. And Jack McGlynn, I thought, had one of his more quiet games, which now looking at my notes, I don't even have 3 stars listed. And I'm sure you guys are tired of me even talking about 3 stars when the Union lose. So do we continue to do 3 stars? Maybe not. And so there's Jim Curtin's response there. Doesn't really answer the question, of how frustrating it is. And so Jim was asked it again towards the end of the press conference, but a different way.
We have the quality in the locker room to get results. If you look at the last several games, each one tells a different story for sure. But we know that in each game, we put ourselves in a position to at least take a point, if not all 3. And we haven't gotten that done. So as the coach, I take the responsibility of that. I know that the guys continue to work hard as they can and fight hard, whether it's in training, in the game. But the small plays we haven't been able to make to turn those losses into ties or ties into wins. And that part is really difficult and hard right now.
And so you guys are smart. Jim Curtin's smart. We're all smart. Jim's getting asked to throw Ernst Tenner under the bus. That's exactly what these questions are, which, by the way, 100% fair questions. And I have no issues at all with the questions that Joe Tanzi, Jose Nunez, and Jonathan Tannenwald asked after the game. 100% fair questions. And I think Jim would say the same thing, that, yeah, they're fair questions. And I think that they asked them respectfully. I think Jim answered them respectfully. And of course, those questions are going to come. And as tough as those questions may be, they've got to be asked. And you want Jim to throw Ernst under the bus. It's just not going to happen. But, it's 13 games now this season where the Union have conceded multiple goals in the same game. 13 out of 20 games. The Union have given up multiple goals in the last 7 out of 10 games and averaged 1.9 goals conceded per game during that stretch. And you also look, during that run, the Union won 6-3, where they were shut out in 3 of those games. And it's not been good enough. It's not been good enough for the Union. Whether or not you have players here is not an excuse, because even when you still have players here, you weren't getting the job done. You weren't getting the job done when Jose Martinez was here, when Damian Lowe was here, when you played him as a center back with Jacob Glesnes, when Daniel Gazdag was here, which came off the bench for this game after Hungary get knocked out of the Euros. Damian Lowe and Jamaica got knocked out of the Copa America. So we'll see if Damian features on Wednesday against Chicago Fire. So the Union are slowly but surely getting players back Venezuela and Jose Martinez. They advanced to the next round of the Copa America. Well done to Jose, and just a very, very, very good Venezuela side. They win Group B with 9 points, 6 goals for, 1 goal conceded. Ecuador finished in second with 4 points. Mexico finished with 4 points as well. Mexico just weren't great at all, and they get knocked out of the Copa America, and things just continue to go from bad to worse for the Mexican Federation. USA taking on Uruguay right now. Last time I checked, that game's 0-0. So we'll see if the US can get it done against Uruguay and potentially get out of this group. I don't know. I wouldn't hold my breath that the US will, but maybe they do. Maybe they don't. We shall see. But I know a lot of US fans are hoping if they don't, that means that Greg Berhalter will get fired. We'll see. Speaking of firing, and Jim Curtin was also asked, are you worried about your future? Are you worried that the Union are going to move on from you?
Look, I know what I've done at the club. I know the highs that we've had in the last 6 years. Those are great, but it is what have you done for me lately business. So again, there's always pressure. You always have to try to improve and get better. Right now we're in one of our toughest stretches we've ever been in. Again, the guys that aren't here aren't going to get us out of it, so the players that aren't here due to international duty, due to injuries, aren't here. So once we get that full slate of guys back, I'm confident we have a really strong group, but that's the reality of things right now. So yeah, there is always pressure to do better, to find a way to get a win. Right now, things are tough.
And so I would argue that, like I just said, when you did have those players here before the international tournaments, you still weren't getting the job done. And I get it. Andre Blake, knee injury. Alejandro Bedoya, quad. Damian Lowe, international duty. Jose Martinez, international duty. Mikal Ua, adductor strain. And then you can include Julián Carranza on that list too, because, like we said, he sold officially not at the club. But I just want to take a look. Before Martinez and Lowe departed for Copa America, the Union were 1-4-5 in the last 10 games played, with 3 of those 5 draws being come from behind draws. So the Union was still conceding first, but they were finding a way to get the games tied. And I can specifically think of the game down in Atlanta. A lot of positives in that game, with Mikal Ua scoring to tie the game up, and then the Union had a goal that was ruled off, which would have given them the 3-2 lead. And who knows if the Union would have won on to win the game or not. They wound up getting a draw, conceded, and Union found a way to fight back in 3 of those games during that 10-game stretch, from the last 10 games, from the Atlanta game all the way up until the Montreal game, I believe it was, at home against Subaru Park. So that's a 10-game stretch I'm talking about there. And then the lone win was against a 10-man New England Revolution squad. And so the only thing I can say, the only difference during that run was, you only had Andre Blake for a game and a half because of a groin injury against Atlanta, I believe it was, and then the knee injury against RSL. And maybe we're seeing, with Andre Blake not here for the majority of the season, just how much he's meant to the team over the years, how much he's helped patch over the flaws with this team. It's very possible. But I would also argue, and I know I said this on the podcast before, that, I can't see Ernst Tenner or Jim Curtin getting fired, but I'm starting to come around to the idea where maybe part of this is on Ernst Tenner for, he's not given the biggest transfer budget, but what happened to the Kai Wagners, the Kasper Schmeichels, the Jacob Glesnesses, the Jose Martinezes that he was finding early on? didn't have a huge budget then, but he's hitting on these players. And you look at the last 3 or 4 windows and not so much. And the budget really hasn't changed. If anything, it's went up a little bit. The Union are spending a little bit more money. But he's also had misses too. Like I'm not naive. Like what about Marco Fabian? But can't really fault Ernst. I feel like for the Marco Fabian deal, that's the Union trying to tap into the Mexican market, and yeah, that didn't go the way that they thought it would. Andrew Rutin, that's one you kick the tires on. You see, okay, well, you were doing well in Austria. Let's see if you can do the same here in MLS. And yeah, it doesn't happen. But a lot more hits early on with essentially the same budget compared to what's happening now. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm starting to come around to maybe Ernst Tanner does deserve some of the blame, because fans are going to be looking to put the blame on somebody. And I don't think anybody's putting the blame on Jim Curtin. Like you said, he knows what he's done at the club the last 6 years once they finally get good players in. But it is a what have you done for me lately business. And as things stand, the Union sit in 12th place in the Eastern Conference with a record of 4-8-8. And I don't think ownership, I don't think Ernst Tanner would say, well, you're not getting it done, Jim. I don't think that they would move on from him. I don't. And I do have a hard time believing that Jay Sugarman would fire Ernst Tanner. I think it's more likely that one of Jim Curtin or Ernst Tanner quits before getting fired. But, things move fast in the soccer world, and nothing should surprise any of us. But that's my thoughts. Definitely a lot longer than I thought it would be for this episode. But yeah, thanks for listening to me rant about this game. And maybe I didn't touch on things that you guys wanted me to touch on. My apologies. Oh, by the way, and I know one of the people that commented on Spotify the last episode was Caden. I forget the second person. I'm so sorry. I deleted the email. I get the emails like a week after you guys comment on the episodes. And I don't think there's a way that I can comment back to you guys on Spotify, but I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts on Spotify. I don't think Apple Podcasts does it. I'll take messages on social media, which, by the way, Alex, I know you're listening. You sent me a message a while ago giving me compliments for an episode, and I never responded to you. And my apologies. Like, that is 100% on me. But if you guys want to leave me comments on Spotify, social media, I'll be sure to at least read the messages, and I will do my best to get back to you guys. But I appreciate you guys always letting me know how you feel about these episodes. But real quick, let's go to Blunder of the Week. And Blunder of the Week is going to go to, everybody's favorite journalist. Can we really call him a journalist, though? I'd say social media influencer. I feel like that's more of a correct term than journalist. That is Fabrizio Romano, for how much he repeats himself when transfers happening.
Yeah, not good.
Like, I knew it was bad. There's been so many times during the season where he's repeating the same thing, just wording it a little bit differently in regards to Manchester United rumors. But what really pissed me off was just watching how much he tweeted about the Julian Carranza deal, basically saying the same thing. And so when June 11th, he announces Feyenoord are closing in on a deal for Julian Carranza. June 14th, he announces that both clubs, Philadelphia and Feyenoord, have agreed to a deal. June 27th, he says the clubs have signed the contracts. Julian Carranza is going to be officially a Feyenoord player. And then the very next day, June 28th, he says Julian Carranza has signed with Feyenoord. And it's like, dude, you told us this literally a day ago. It's like, you just reworded it. And technically, you told us that Julian was going to Feyenoord on June 11th. And so 4 times you mentioned the deal between Philadelphia, Union, and Feyenoord. And you just change your wording up a little bit. It's like, we known. We knew that this was happening. And it's not just the union that he does this with. It's every single club. And you hear people say that agents pay him money to announce transfers. You hear clubs pay him money to announce transfers. Like, this guy is 100% social media influencer. Like, that's exactly what he is. People are feeding him the information just because he has a lot of followers on social media, and they want him to announce the deals first. And he's the one who gets the ball rolling and getting fans excited. And it's just so annoying. It's so annoying watching him repeat himself so many times. So many times within a couple days. And sometimes it's literally a couple hours. Like, he'll just change the wording up a little bit. It's like, come on, dude, what are we doing? But you're farming that engagement. You're getting your social media engagement so you can get paid. I get it. I guess I respect the hustle. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/freekickpod. Wherever you get your podcast, like I said, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/freekickpod. I'll have an article coming out previewing the Chicago Fire game later today. And I'm working on a piece with Jose Nunez. I don't want to divulge what we're working on, but it involves me getting quotes from players after the Chicago Fire game, because I am going to the Chicago Fire game on Wednesday, my first time in Chicago. So really looking forward to that. And hopefully the Union can get a result, and Jim and the players will be in a mood to talk. But a lot happening. You guys will get a podcast after that game on Wednesday. I'm taking my little mic that I have that I do my interviews with in the locker room. So you guys will get a podcast. You guys will get a goals breakdown video, and you'll get a match review breaking down everything that happened. And like I said, hopefully some quotes from the players after the game, because that makes things so much more interesting. But again, I can't thank you guys enough for listening to the podcast, for the support, and just in these dark times, like, your guys' support has been amazing, and you guys are going to be the reason why the Union get out of this rut. I don't think it's going to last forever. Yes, things are dark right now, but because you guys, the fans, support this club, you support the players, you support Jim Curtin and this coaching staff, you guys are going to be the reason why things start to turn around. Because, yeah, things look dark and bleak right now, and I don't think they're always going to look that way. I'd be shocked if the Union finished the season in 12th place. I'd be shocked if the Union go even lower. Will they make the playoffs? Who knows? Everybody makes the playoffs. But I do know things will get better because of you guys, the fans. So with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.